What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and you know, every couple months, I do something that I call, for whatever reason, like a fireside chat with PikiPikaPapa. I know, the name is stupid, but we do a lot of data dives on this channel. We do a lot of trend analysis. We do a lot of high energy, like in your face, like let's pump it up and have some fun and talk about Pokemon things. But every so often, I like to scale it back a little bit, which we're gonna do today, and I'm gonna share with you kind of my investing philosophy here in the Pokemon space, and most importantly, like how my investing philosophy in the Pokemon space plays a larger role in my macro level investing theory and my macro level investing plan, and how all of it works together. And I think that's really important to understand, because you see how passionate I am about the hobby, you see how much work I put into it behind the scenes, and I do it, yes, I do it for you guys, and I do it because I love it, but there's a greater purpose to that too, and I'm going to walk you through some of that today. Now, the other thing I want to call out before we get into this is I have two different collections, okay? So I have my personal collection, which is near and dear to my heart. I have no plans on ever selling that, right? Like it would take a, I don't know, it would take Armageddon for me to have to sell those cards. Now, obviously that can happen. You never know what life is going to throw your way, but those would be the very last things that I possibly sell, and I would only sell them if there was some type of crazy emergency. So these are cards that just have a special relationship with me and my family. You know, me and my kids enjoy the hobby together. We pull cards together. I grade things that I should have no purpose grading simply because it just solidifies a memory that I had. I have cards that I really love that mean a lot to me. You know, I'm a big Gengar fan. I'm a big Pikachu fan, right? Like I collect those cards, and I try not to sell them unless, again, it was some kind of crazy event. But I also have a very large part of my collection, which is what I truly consider my investment side. And any kind of investment is only an investment if you do have an intent to sell in the future. Because the idea is you buy it at a certain price, you sell it at a higher price in the future, and you realize some capital appreciation, some capital gains. Now, the time when you sell might not be defined, although I do think it's great to have a plan. I'm going to go through my plan with you here today, but it is very important for me, at least, when I have an investing side of things, that I have some type of plan in place, and as I said, I'm going to share that with you. Now, there was one specific event which caused this video to kind of come together in my mind, and that was because there was a new book that was released, and I don't know if this will surprise you or not, but I'm a big reader. Actually, I'm not a big reader. Let me explain to you. So here's what I do. If a book comes out and I think that I'm going to have some interest in it, I specifically focus on leadership books, and I specifically focus on finance books. Like those are the areas where I'm always trying to grow and educate myself. So if a book comes out and I think that I'll find some interest in it, I buy it on audio first. Like I will buy the audio book, because you know I travel a lot for work. I'm in planes, trains, and automobiles half of my life. So what do? I listen to a book first. And if I listen to it and I say, hey, this is really cool, or if there's a couple key points that I think I can take away from it, then I will actually buy the book again, except I will buy it in actual print form. Why do I do that? Why do I pay for a book twice? Well, I do that because I can listen to it one way, but the way I retain knowledge best is by actually reading it. I'll take a highlighter, I'll highlight certain things, like just going through that action helps me absorb and retain the information even more. So my time is very finite. As I said, I travel a lot for work. I have a full-time job. I'm going to talk to you about Snowball and a side business that we have, that we run, which is no longer a side business. It's a big business, right? And so I have a very finite amount of time. So I kind of, work through the books by listening to them. And then if I find value in them, I actually read them. And now I'm going to talk to you about that. So Snowball is a book that I've talked about once before on this channel, which I think is really applicable here to the Pokemon space. It's an autobiography on Warren Buffett. And it talks about how he started with a small amount of money and he snowballed it into large amounts in the future. Now, you can very much do that here in the Pokemon space. You can start with any budget, 5, 50, 500, 5,000, 50,000, whatever you want. You can start with any budget you want. You can make some choice purchases, and then you can, in time, sell them for more, and then use the additional money that you've generated to reinvest into the Pokemon space. Like, Pokemon is a space where you can absolutely snowball it. Now, me and my family, we snowballed a vending machine business, which is crazy to say. In February of 22, we started a vending machine business with one vending machine and a dream. And now on Friday, I'm going to be installing our 16th vending machine, right? Which is crazy. To go from one vending machine to 16 in such a short amount of time is crazy. And we're going to do over $100,000 in revenue. And that started off as a side business, but now my wife had to quit her job and she does that full time. So when I talk about books that actually have a meaningful impact on me and my life, like Snowball is it. And so I've done a video on it in the past, and I think there's a lot of lessons that you can take from it. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I will link all of these books in the description of this video in case you want to check them out. I'll make them an affiliate link, so I don't know, I'll probably get a nickel if you decide to buy it, but I will make it an affiliate link so you can go ahead and do that. And now there's another series of books which I've taken a lot from and I have found very applicable, not just to my investing life in general, but especially here in the Pokemon space as well, and I'm going to walk you through those too. So the next book was Tony Robbins. Now, the thing I love about him is he's a high energy guy like me. He's a motivational guy, but you know, he's not the best financial person. However, what he does in his books is he interviews the best financial people all over the world. So he has this amazing reach and he can get access to really the smartest minds in the financial world. And then what he does is he includes their interviews in his book and he takes them and kind of summarizes it into a thought process, into, you know, a buying, selling, investing plan and all of that. And so I took a ton of value from that, and that was his very first one. You'll see there at the very bottom, it says secrets from the world's greatest financial minds. Like, he interviews awesome people and you can take so much away from this. If you want to be a master at something, if you want to level yourself up, there's no better way, there's no faster way to do it than by taking lessons from people who have already mastered it or who have been really successful in that space. And this book absolutely did that for me, and it really helped me a lot with my investing philosophy. The next book that he came out with was Unshakable, and the whole point of this was finding peace of mind in a world of volatility. Now, when you think about the Pokemon space, my God, we are filled with volatility, and you've heard me talk about a lot of things in the past. I'll say if I miss an opportunity, I miss an opportunity. It is what it is. There will be more opportunities in the future. I don't lose sleep over it. I talk about buy what will go up, not what has gone up, right? Like, a lot of these come from, you know, some passages, some learnings that I've had. You know, this book is great. He talks about, you know, being steadfast in the face of a downturn in a market, right? Like, I will tell you this, wealth is created in downturns in markets. It is not destroyed. Like, savvy people, savvy investors find ways to make a ton of money when markets downturn. We can all do that in the Pokemon space again, right? Just like we can in the overall macro investing space as well, and we'll talk about that. So we're finally going to get to the next book and the final book that I'm going to show you, and this was the one that just came out. It's the newest release by Tony Robbins, and this was what caused me to do this video right here and why I think it's incredibly applicable. So, his newest book that just came out is called The Holy Grail of Investing, and it says how the smart money uses alternative investments to win in any market. Now, again, Pokemon is an alternative investment. Cars are an alternative investment. Wine and art, all of that is alternative investments. Now, he doesn't talk about that in this book, but I thought it was really cool that he talks about alternative investments from the standpoint that when the stock market goes down, alternative assets either stay flat or they go up. And that's incredibly important. And that is one of the main reasons why Pokemon and cards in general are a big part of my investing philosophy. And that is because I'm going to show you through the last financial crisis here. We're going to talk through 2008 when a lot of us weren't collecting, right? We're going to talk about a little bit of a correction that happened in 2018 further on in this video. We're going to talk about obviously in 2020, right? When the pandemic came and everything crashed. You know, I think a lot of us are fixated on what happened in 2020 and we think that that only happened once. That was only because of a global pandemic. But I'm going to show you that during the last financial crash prior to that in 2008, what we saw in the card market in general was exactly the same thing as we saw in 2020, which leads me to believe that we've seen it happen a couple times, that if there is, not if, but when there is, the market will crash again in the future. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know what will cause it to crash. But when the market does crash in the future, guess what? Cards in general will probably stay relatively flat, or they could even appreciate in value. But if the stock market drops 20, 30, 40, we even see an instance of 50%, and your cards remain flat, that investment fund that you have, that investment bucket, even if you sell it at that point in time and you reinvest it into some things that are down, like the stock market, right? You have the opportunity to create massive amounts of wealth in a short amount of time, and you get to create that wealth while enjoying what you're investing in, which is here in the Pokemon space. So you know, I've said this 100 times, like when it comes to me standardizing and me prioritizing all of my investment vehicles, like everything else is ahead of Pokemon, right? Pokemon is my fun investment. I prioritize my 401k, my Roth IRA, I have a high deductible health plan, like all of those things, my kids 529, I prioritize all of that, and I use my extra here in the Pokemon space. So again, lots of stuff that I've talked about, and I'm really excited to go through this. But again, this is really cool how a book like Tony Robbins' book is talking about alternative investments. Now again, he does not talk about any of those things that I just mentioned. He doesn't talk about cars or arts or automobiles. He talks about private equity. He talks about private credit. He talks about some other things that might not necessarily interest a lot of us. But again, when you think about the whole principle of the book is to find an investment vehicle that does not correlate to the stock market. So when the stock market crashes, you have money somewhere else that will stay flat or go up, so you can redistribute those resources into things that are down. That was the really big takeaway for me. So listen, before I get into the graphs, before I get into the charts, hey, we have a ton of fun here on this PikiPikaPapa channel. This might not be the most fun, but I certainly think this is one of the most interesting topics, and hopefully it's going to be one of the most impactful too. So if you like this type of stuff, hit that subscribe button. We do tons of data dives and trends analysis, and I think we take things to the next level here. If you like what you see in this video, give me a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. So with all that out of the way, let's look at some of these graphs that have been happening in the past and have led me to this point to create this video for all of you. So this right here, remember I told you we're going to forget about 2020 at first. We're going to go all the way back to 2008. Now, a lot of us, myself included, have been very fortunate in that the stock market has been on an incredible bull run ever since this crash in 2008. You know, other than what happened in 2020, this was literally one of the longest bull markets that the US stock market had ever seen, which was absolutely incredible. So we had to go way back to look for a time where we saw a crash so we could compare it to how sports cards fared versus the stock market. And that's what we're going to look at here. And this is a Pokemon channel. I'm talking about investing in Pokemon cards. So I don't want you to get confused by the fact that we're going to use a sports card comparison here, because guess what? Sports cards and Pokemon cards did the exact same thing during the pandemic. They did the exact same thing during 2008, okay? So even though this is a sports card focused graph, it is the exact same thing. We're talking about alternative assets. We're talking about collecting cardboard. Like, that is what we're looking at. So here, back in 2008, okay, you can see that the stock market dropped. It went all the way from 5,000 all the way down to $3,839. Look at the drop right there. That white line is the S&P 500. That light gray line is the NASDAQ right there. Okay, so that's saying if you had $5,000 invested into those two at that time, they would have dropped all the way down there. Now look at that bright blue line. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about for the next two graphs. That bright blue line is called the PWC 500. Okay, so PWCC is a big selling platform on the internet. Okay, so they buy and sell a whole lot of cards. Like, they are well known for what they do. They index out the top 500 most valuable sports cards over periods of time. And so they've been doing it for a long, long time. So they have this PWCC 500 index. So these are the 500 most valuable sports cards. Now, one thing you need to remember is this includes Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson, right? This has Michael Jordan and it's got Wayne Gretzky in it. Like, these are the biggest and the baddest names out here. For us equivalent, this would be like your Charizards, your Blastoise, right? This is going to have your Pikachus in it, your Mews, your Mewtwo's, right? So these are the biggest and the baddest, the highest value cards that you can possibly find. The 500 highest value cards are in that bucket right there. Okay, so look what happened. Look during the financial crash, the market correction of 2008. See how far down all of the investment vehicles, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, absolutely crashed. I mean, it dropped significantly. But what happened to that PWCC 500 index? It essentially stayed flat. It actually went up $100, okay? So we actually saw some growth, okay? And now that is really important. Obviously, we all know that that's the same thing that happened in 2020, but it's really important to tie this back to 2008 and see that this is what's happened. So again, this is one of the main reasons why I'm investing in Pokemon. So now let's look at the next graph right here. This is 2020, okay? Again, this is fresh in our mind. This is what all of us went through. Remember, all of us thought that, hey, listen, Pokemon cards popped off the way they did, sports cards popped off the way they did because everybody was stuck inside their house and nobody had anywhere to go and everybody was kind of nostalgic, so they started doing that. But guess what? In 2008, like, the crash wasn't caused by a pandemic, right? It wasn't because people were stuck in the house, right? It was because people were selling out of these investment vehicles like the NASDAQ, like the S&P 500, where they were scared, like the VIX Fear Index was all the way through the roof, which causes people to sell out, and they were buying tangible things they can hold, things they can actually put in a collection at home, things that they care about, things that they can relate to. So while all of these stocks were going down, right, you had the PWCC 500, remember, again, the 500 most expensive baseball, football, basketball cards out there, they actually, again, increased in value. So how does this play a part in my overall investing thing? Well, I am building this Pokemon investment collection, right? And I believe that no matter what happens, even if we remain in a very strong bull market for the next, who knows, 10, 15, 20 years, who knows what lies ahead. But even if we remain in a very strong bull market, guess what? The cards are still going to appreciate in value. I have no doubt that my sealed collection is going to grow in value, that some of these awesome slabs that I have are going to grow in value. They might not grow by leaps and bounds, you know what I mean? I think the sealed will. Some of the slabs will probably grow a little bit slower, but they will grow in value. However, what I do think will happen is there will be another market correction, hopefully not for many, many years into the future, but whenever the next market correction happens, depending on how big the drop is, that might be the opportunity where I take not my personal collection, not my personal cards. But I take those investment funds and I say, okay, listen, is this the time to sell some of these that are remaining flat and rotate that money into some of these stocks and bonds or whatever it is that is absolutely falling through the floor? That is a great opportunity to create some amazing amounts of wealth, because guess what happened after 2008, right? We all know that we went on one of the greatest bull market runs in the history of the stock market. And now what has happened after this drop in 2020? Guess what? We've entered a bull market, right? Prices are starting to get S&P 500s hitting all-time highs again, right? We have all kinds of excitement that's going on. So really, darkness turns to light, right? Bottoms always lead to new all-time highs in the future. And again, you make a fortune when you can invest when things are down. Now, what would I do? So what would I do? I would sell out, and I would sell out slowly over time. Now, what happened during this right here was, as the stock market started to crash, I think a lot of us did the same thing. We used some dry powder. We rotated out of some of our bond holdings. We sold there to get some cash positions as bonds were holding steady and the stock market was going down. And I was investing every single day. I kid you not, every morning for like 13, 18, I can't remember how many. I know it was over 2 weeks. Over 2 consecutive weeks, every morning I was waking up and I was buying stocks because I was buying all the way down, right? I was trying to. You never know when the end is going to happen. But I always wish you had more. I always wish I had more dry powder. I always wish I had more to invest in. But I didn't have a Pokemon collection to invest in. I had my sports cards, which was a personal collection, which I didn't want to sell to go into stocks. But if I build out this Pokemon card collection and if I build out this investment thing in the Pokemon space, then guess what? I'll have all kinds of dry powder if we go through something like this again. So that is when I would sell everything, is when we go through a period like this again in the future. That is what it would take for me to sell. Other than that, I'm probably going to ride a lot of these gains as far as I can into the future. Now, the next graph here that's really cool to look at is, obviously we talked about the 2008 financial crisis, okay, and you can see the S&P 500 and the PWCC right here, and you'll see from peak to trough, the S&P 500 dropped 52%. That is an incredible drop. During that same period of time, the PWCC was actually up 1%. And I told you, we've already talked about 2020, but during 2018, there was a much less volatile market correction, okay? So it didn't drop, it wasn't a crash, it was a market correction. You'll see the S&P 500 from peak to trough dropped 18%. And during that period of time, guess what? The PWCC again went up 4%. So we have 3 different instances. Again, I want to get outside of that, outside of the pandemic bubble that we're all kind of stuck in thinking that that was the only reason that drove these cards to increase in value, okay? So we have 2008, we have 2018, we have 2020. For me, there's enough empirical evidence for me to sit here and say, guess what? I have a strong feeling that during the next financial crisis, whatever that might be, whenever it happens, these cards will at least retain their value at whatever they're at that point in the future, and that'd be a great opportunity to rotate into some once-in-a-lifetime type deals in the stock market. So with all that being said, I wanted to pull together some really cool quotes that I was able to come across as I was doing all of the research into this video, and I thought this was really cool, so I wanted to start off with this. And again, don't get lost in the sauce because it says sports cards, right? Like, again, they don't do a ton of information out there on Pokemon and TCG space, but you know that I am a firm believer that the TCG space is even better positioned than the sports card space into the future. So when you look at this one, sports trading cards market to grow substantially, accounting for $20 billion by 2030, with North America leading the market as popularity for sports trading cards rises. And this was from August 29th of 2023, okay? So we're talking about less than a year ago is when this article was written, well after the pandemic. So even after the pandemic, this is from Yahoo Finance, even well after the pandemic pump, even after the normalization, people are still really bullish about the collecting space. Another thing that I thought was a really cool quote down here, sports memorabilia appraiser believes sports cards are the next generation's art, which I thought was really cool, more applicable in the Pokemon space than anywhere else because the artwork is so amazing. You can connect with cards even if it's not your favorite Pokemon. The art can just transcend everything and suck you in. It is so incredibly awesome and amazing, and I love that. The other thing is something I alluded to earlier, another quote, say, buy what you like. If the market goes down, at least you still have something you cherish that you bought for a reason. As somebody who buys stocks all the time, guess what? I'm buying nothing, but I'm just moving money around. Like, that's it. I don't have anything to hold. I don't have anything that I can make tangible. Like, it's funny, we drive through McDonald's sometimes, or my daughter will be holding my iPhone because she's too young to have one, and I'll be like, hey, we're part owners of Apple, and she could care less. That means absolutely nothing to her. She looks at me like I'm an absolute idiot. However, when I hold that Pokemon Pokemon card, when I let her hold it, it's something tangible. She loves it. She cares about it. Like, she can find some way to connect with that. So not only is it a great way to invest for me, but for me, it's also a great way to connect investing to the next generation, to my kids, so they can understand that. The other thing down here, during times of economic unease, people tend to gravitate towards more tangible liquid assets like cards or gold. I thought that was really interesting. And again, gold is another thing that you typically see when the market's not performing well. Gold typically goes up. People start selling out of these things that they can't hold and they can't feel, like stocks, and they start moving into things that they can physically hold, like gold and cards. Really interesting. And then here you go. Here's a quote from the PwCC Marketplace Director of Business Development, Jesse Craig, and I thought this was interesting. Over the 3 most recent market crashes, sports cards have held a stable value. While the S&P 500 fell by an average of nearly 17 points and bonds took a small hit, sports cards actually saw overall positive returns. So that was really impactful. And again, that kind of summarizes the whole video that we've gone over today. We've looked at a ton of information that cannot be argued with. Like, these are hard, cold, hard facts. They are what they are. The numbers don't lie. And that is why I invest in Pokemon cards. I invest in Pokemon cards because I can tie some investment vehicle that is uncorrelated to the stock market itself, that I am so passionate about, that I absolutely love, that I think in the future at some point is going to give me an incredible opportunity to keep the stuff that I love, to sell the stuff that I'm not as much in love with, or that I simply have for an investment vehicle, and I will be able to use that as dry powder. I will be able to use those resources to invest into a down stock market, which will give my family and me the opportunity for some incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunities and some incredible once-in-a-lifetime growth for us, and hopefully for my children far into the future. So when you think about why I invest in Pokemon, that is it. When would I sell everything? That is exactly it. So again, I know this isn't what we typically do, but I thought this would be really cool. I love those books that I came out with. I encourage you to educate yourself, read everything that you can, certainly go far beyond the PikiPikaPapa space when it comes to learning about investing in Pokemon space and investing in general. I appreciate you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments down below, and y'all have a great one. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye.